Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Premiership podcast. We're your hosts, Jacob,
And Elijah.
and let's get crack-a-lacking into the round that just passed with Carlton losing to Brisbane. Carlton putting on an appalling display at Marvel Stadium with a surprising stat of 85 points against them from turnovers. And to say that they really disappointed us this round is an understatement.
Yeah. Well, it's another week where you know you'd have home court advantage against an interstate team coming down to a very unfamiliar ground, and then you just expect
Mm.
it's not too flash from Carlson recently.
Mm.
Um, I mean, yeah, it's just across the board, a pretty dominant performance from a lot of guys from Brisbane. Josh
Mm.
Dunkley, in front of goal, Zach Bailey and Cameron at four each.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it's just Carlton couldn't keep up.
Payne from the Lions really cemented himself as key defender. He played a fantastic game. But to see Brisbane win in Melbourne against a somewhat quality opposition, I'm not sure if we can call Carlton quality opposition at the moment. It's good to see them finally win in a place where the grand final is held.
Yeah, oh, is that MCG or Marvel?
It's the MCG, but
Well, the game.
Marvel's in the same state,
Well, no, yeah,
if it makes sense.
the game was just played at Marvel.
Yeah.
But no, different grounds. We know how Richmond feels about that.
Mm.
But yeah, no, it's actually good to get those interstate wins from Brisbane.
Mm.
Because they're harder to get, especially the international interstate clubs. So
Mm.
yeah,
I guess the only real disappointment in terms of the Blues is that they've gone and got all these players from other teams and have pretty much built themselves a list that's in for finals contention, and they're just not displaying that sort of eagerness to actually want to play finals.
yeah. I mean, they're rather uncompetitive, to be honest.
Mm.
Um, I don't know what much else there is to say. I mean, one of the best players on the team was, you know, like some rookies. Uh, and across the board you had, Kerno kicks one goal, two, Charlie Kerno.
Mm.
Um, and then Mackay got a goal, but that's one goal, and you'd expect him to get at least a bag. So
Mm.
outside of outside of a few people,
Mm.
yeah, just there's a lot of people there. I think they need to get back into form.
So I don't think it's even that. Last week, Kerno kicked 9 goals, and Mackay had a very good game up forward as well against the Eagles up at Optus. And
Mm.
we asked last week of Carlton to ramp it up against a quality opposition in the Lions. And they've got a very tough month ahead with Geelong, Essendon, Sydney, Collingwood. So it's really going to be interesting to see where they fall after the next month and a bit, because if they can't win at least two of these games, they will not be making finals.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And ideally for Carlton, they would be making finals too.
Mm.
Um, they've, I mean, they've definitely got the list for it. They basically need to make finals
Mm.
for the club. So
The club's sake.
yeah, um, they'll need to definitely step it up again over
Mm.
this next month. But how that looks, I don't know.
Yeah, and I guess I'll go more into that when I get a bit frustrated with Carlton.
Yeah.
But on to the next game, Saturday.
All right, heading off the Saturday, MCG, Richmond, beating the Eagles.
Richmond really allowed West Coast to stay in this game. Oscar Allen kicking 4 of the 6 West Coast first goals. So Oscar Allen is a very redeemable quality of West Coast, and he's probably one of the best forwards in the comp at the moment under a very poor West Coast team. Jai Cully injured himself, so I hope he's doing well. But
Yeah.
Richmond, with a quarter and a bit to go, they just put their foot on the gas and really blew West Coast out of the park.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, ignoring the first, half,
Mm,
Bolton had a pretty good game with
mm,
8 marks, 31 disposals, and 3 goals. Um, Short, Hopper, Taranto, you know, uh, even Rewalt, who wasn't as influential as he has been in the past, still had an
mm,
okay game. Um, so you know, once again, during the first half, Richmond
mm,
they pulled the socks up and they actually got their act together, as we
mm,
would have expected from the opening bounce. Um,
mm,
but yeah, good props to West Coast for staying in it for so long. I definitely didn't see that coming.
mm.
And it's actually really good effort. Uh, Sheed, really good game. Oscar Allen, he's getting better and better every week.
Mm.
Um,
He's really revived his career, hasn't he?
Allen,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah. I don't know how many years he's been in the league. I don't think it's that long, but no.
He's been in the league for about 4 or 5 years. In the past 2 seasons, he's been very off, and that was mainly during COVID as well.
Yeah.
So
Well, he's good now.
yeah, he is good
uh,
now.
yeah, no, and yeah, it's across the board. The Eagles didn't win, obviously, but until like just over halfway of the second quarter, no, third quarter. They were in it within a kick, and then it just got away
Mm,
from them. So a lot of really good things to see from the Eagles, and you'll see that in their power rankings too. Um,
mm.
but I'm pretty happy with their effort. Um,
Um, I've got two questions for you, Elijah,
mhm.
and the first one is Adam Simpson under fire for losing his coaching job?
um, well, if AFL 23 has anything to say about it, he'd make a really good goal umpire. Um, but no, it's hard. It's hard
Mm,
because they've only got 26 players who are available to play,
mm,
and then another one got injured on the weekend.
mm,
So I don't think he's completely to blame.
mm,
Um, of course, yeah, you could make an argument like, yeah, Simpson, this all that. I like him
mm,
as a coach. I think he's good. He got there, it was 2019, I
mm-hmm.
think. Premiership or 2018.
2018,
Yeah,
2018
2018.
against the Pies.
Yeah,
Dom Shade from the boundary.
yeah. Uh, I mean, he got there, and that's good.
Mm,
It's been just injuries and super unlucky. Um,
mm.
so maybe change some other people around the club, but I don't think Adam Simpson should be in the firing line. I think he's also pretty good to be building up the younger talent too.
Hmm.
He's just been
And
dealt shorthand.
mm, yeah, that's fair enough, especially last season with COVID as
Yep,
well hitting
even now.
WA.
Yeah.
Mm. And the second question I have for you is: should West Coast invest in another key forward for Jack Darling? Because Jack Darling hasn't been in great form this season, and he's going into the twilight of his career.
I probably say not. The only reason I would say that is you got a young list. It's an okay young list. You got some really good players on there. Players which any other club would love to have.
Mm,
Um, I'd almost, yeah, I'd almost not try to get someone to play with him because you have other people like Oscar Allen, right? I'd almost move him aside to get the young kids experience in, like the Hawks have done.
I bet Mitch Georgiades,
Yeah,
because he's a WA boy.
yeah, that could help. Although I don't know if his stage of his development as a football player is kind of on the same stage as West Coast. Whether that would,
And his injury as well.
yeah, whether that would hinder or benefit the team.
Mm.
Um, so I'm not too sure. That's not a bad option though. Um,
Mm.
I don't know how I feel about trading Darling, but I definitely wouldn't try to make him the guy again. You know,
Yeah.
we should be entering this new era, West Coast rebuild, of getting
Mm.
new people in, younger people rather.
Mm.
So good to get experienced players in too,
Mm.
but yeah, he's not going to be the same guy as he was half a decade ago.
That's fair enough. But with that, we can move on to the next game.
Yeah. So in Geelong, the Cats beat the Crows pretty convincingly.
The Cats and Crows. The Crows put up a very good fight every time Geelong kicked a goal or two. Adelaide would come back, and Geelong just held their width at Gym HBA and won at home. Jeremy Cameron put up another good game. Usual suspects. The only thing to come out of Geelong is Dangerfield's hamstring injury, where he's had a very good month of football. So where that's gonna hinder Geelong's midfield, we won't know yet. But I'm sure Geelong will get Dangerfield back up and running in no time. With especially last year when Dangerfield had that mid-season sort of fitness training regimen, and he got back into some really good form. So whether or not this brings in a young bloke like Dempsey and stuff like, and the young youth players in the VFL as well, Tanner Brun and Bowie's as well. So there's still a lot to get excited about with Geelong, but that injury is very costly with Dangerfield being in good form. Adelaide put up again a very good fight. Um, Rankin is probably the player that I will get most and say he could have done a bit better because there were some very gettable goals that he just missed.
Yeah. Um, I mean, looking at the statistics, because I didn't actually
Mm,
watch the game, Crows didn't do a whole lot wrong. Um,
mm,
I mean, they, you know, Geelong like what out tackled them and outmarked them, but like
mm,
it's still, you know, uh, I mean they're definitely more efficient inside 50. That's probably where the
mm,
game kind of turned around. Um, but I mean, very similar in disposals. Um, you know, Geelong more inside 50s. But Adelaide, better disposal efficiency, more sense of clearances, pretty much the same in nearly every single stat.
mm,
And they lost by nearly, what, 4 or 5 goals. So a lot of empty stats, I guess. But,
mm.
I mean, they put up a good fight, for sure.
Adelaide can put up can keep their heads up high because they versus a team in a ground where they train at. So and it's what is it, 176 meters, and the wings are 15 meters more inwards compared to the MCG and other grounds throughout Australia.
Something like that.
So, something around those lines. But I know the width of the grounds isn't as big as the MCG or Optus. So for Adelaide to come to GMHBA to put up a performance like that is a huge tick on their behalf.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of like the places you don't want to play at if you're not Geelong. It's
Oh
just
yeah,
so hard to play there, and Geelong play
mm,
it so well. But they're part of a really good fight. Definitely better than Sydney.
mm,
Um, yeah, no, good stuff from both
good stuff.
teams.
Mm,
Um, I mean, yeah, Cameron kicking 3 goals as usual.
mm.
Um,
Took a great mark as well.
yeah, no, I did see that. Yeah, uh, you know, Kaczynski, Radaglia, Stewart, a lot of good marks. Yeah, no.
The one thing that came out of this game for me is one of the young guns. Never he kicked his first goal and has
Mhm.
officially signed a new contract as well.
Yeah,
So good on him.
good on him. Um, yeah, no, I'm sure because that name's been floating around for a while now.
Mm,
He'll probably, hopefully, be one of the mainstays at that club.
mm. The one thing that I'd like to ask of Geelong is they've got a bunch of old players, and we know too old, too slow, but too old and too good. When do Geelong think of revitalising their list to bring in some exciting youth and start really rebuilding towards more dynasties? Because we look at Geelong's list and they've got a lot of players over the age of 30. And yes, you want to keep your mature players to bring in that youth. And yes, they've got Brad Close. Um, who else is there? They've got, what's his face? Henry, Ollie Henry and Jack Henry. They've got some good middle aged players as well. But when do they start revitalising their list?
I'd almost say they don't need to. They've just
Mm,
drafted and traded so well.
mm,
They almost don't need to.
mm,
You have younger guys, even like Radical Leah,
mm,
who like they're good players. Give them a bit more time, and they'll probably be
mm,
like one of the best players in the team. So
mm,
yeah, you almost don't need to even do anything extra with this team. You can almost just wait it out. You know, Tom Hawkins retires, Dangerfield retires. All these guys slowly move out, and you already have a really, really good core, which only maybe one or two pieces that are missing, and you're already there.
mm,
So I think this team stays good for a long while still.
mm.
Yeah.
Very cool. On to the next game.
All right. Uh, a lot closer than we thought, but Gold Coast, hosting Melbourne. Melbourne just getting over the line. What did,
I feel very bad for the Suns because there was a lot of missed calls um, with free kicks, and it was a McPherson missing that goal right in front with a minute to go.
yeah.
Um, feel very sad for Gold Coast, but Melbourne getting the dub here, they probably should have won by a lot more, in my opinion.
Mm,
But they really put it to the D's, the Suns. They played really well. Um, the grass eater, Matt Rhea, the GOAT, um, he played a really good game. Noah Anderson, fantastic as always.
yeah.
Um, down forward, King played really well. And on the other side, Bailey Fritsch played a really good game as well. Petrarca played a fantastic last half of football. Oliver, Max Gorn, Brody Grundy, just was a very big arm wrestle that game, and Melbourne just got there in the end.
Yeah. Um, Noah Anderson. Well, great
Mm,
player. He's really shaping up well for the Suns. Hopefully, he doesn't
mm,
get cross trades.
mm,
Um, I think the Suns are still missing Miller. Took Miller.
mm-hmm,
But overall, really good effort. Very, very big gettable game for the Suns.
mm,
Unfortunate sequence at the end. But yeah, they definitely could have and probably should have won this game.
mm,
Uh, yeah, no, Melbourne. You'd expect them to have blown Gold Coast out of the water in this one, but they didn't.
mm,
Um, so I mean, you had some players who were like pretty okay, but I mean, Max Gorn and Brody Grundy still got outrucked by Jared Witts.
wits. Mm,
Yeah, um, and even like Oliver Petrarca, they still got like in the midfield. Anderson and McPherson still kind of had their number a bit.
mm.
So I mean,
Was-
they'll take the 4 points, but it's not a
mm.
convincing win.
In terms of percentage as well for them moving forward.
Yeah.
Um, I think it was Davies, number 41 for the Suns, Davies or Rojas Jr. He kicked 5 goals,
Yeah,
bringing up
Matt Rosas.
Matt Roses.
Yeah,
Um, so he put up a great performance with 4 goals, a career high for him. So huge props to him for kicking his career most goals
yeah.
as a young bloke.
He had a great game too. Yeah, really
Mm.
impressed by him. Sure.
But other than that, anything else you want to say about that game, Elijah?
Not really.
Mm.
Great effort by Gold Coast, definitely winnable.
Mm.
Melbourne could have done a bit more, but 4 points are 4 points. You'll take those.
Exactly right.
Yep.
On to the next game.
All right. Giants hosting the Doggies. Bulldogs getting over the line by 2.5 goals, 15 points. Um, yeah. What are your thoughts on this one?
This game was the Bontempelli and Tom Green show.
Yeah.
Bontempelli put up a great performance, and Tom Green, as a young bloke, is putting up Bontempelli like plays for the Giants. So the Giants have a good core to build around with O'Halloran, Callahan, and so on and so forth. But in the end, the Dogs were just too good. Tim English, fantastic again. Norton played a good game, I feel. Jesse Hogan, the player who we all seem to forget about, played a pretty good game. Lloyd for the Giants played a really good game as well. Up half forward. Um, who else was there? In their back, Taylor played very well. Brown played really well from what I saw from the highlights of the game because I didn't watch this game. Um, but yeah, it was just predominantly the Bontempelli and Green show this game.
Yeah. And you can see that statistically too. Both
Mm.
players really, really good games. Question for you, Jacob.
Mm.
We know that Tim English is probably the best ruck in the game. I don't think that's a big call to make.
Mm-hmm.
Um, who would be the second best ruck in the competition right now? Because I think Tim English, week in, week out, kind of gets everyone, and there's no stopping him.
I look. I'm not going to say Max Gawn or Brody Grundy. I feel like they're about third or fourth.
That's fair enough.
With that duo, but I feel like Oscar McInerney,
Yeah. McInerney from the Lions.
McInerney. I'm looking at players that could probably step up against English because Mark Pitton that wouldn't be able to.
Not quite.
Mark Pitton that wouldn't be able to.
Not quite. Not yet.
Um, not yet.
Is Jared
Um,
Witt's a bad call?
Jared Witts is a very good call. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like his athleticism going forward and back is very good, but whether or not he can keep up with English is a question I ask. But I feel like who did I say again? It was Oscar McInerney in terms of strength in the ruck. He'd beat English, but I feel like English is the better ruckman at the moment because lately he's just been getting ground balls and he's been able to kick on the run, and that's a huge plus for teams because we look at the likes of Dean Cox when he played at West Coast. He could kick on the run and he could kick when he marked the ball. So for a team to have a ruckman that can kick stationary and on the run is a huge bonus, and that's why English is one of the best, if not the best, ruckman in the league
Yeah,
at this time.
fair enough. I think he's the best ruck in the comp right now.
Mm,
I think, Jared Witt's having Grundy and Gorn's numbers on the weekend.
mm,
I think he's up there. Also, a bit of a shout out to Rowan Marshall. He's
mm,
putting in the work. Not as good as English though. I think
mm,
English, week in week out, he's probably the best ruck in the comp, and 40 hitouts on the weekend as well against
mm,
the Giants. As opposed to Flynn's 28. So
mm.
I think pretty good job
And
from him.
The thing I'd like to say about this is it usually takes a bit longer to develop ruckmans into their role.
Yep.
English has been in the system since day dot, and he's just developed more and more. And how old is he now? 22, 23 years old. He's got another 10 years in him if he keeps injury free, and he could probably be up for contentions for one of the best rucks to play the game with the likes of Dean Cox.
That's a big call, but I can see it. Yeah.
Mm.
But if he carries his form into the next few years, definitely,
Mhm.
probably, yeah. Any other thoughts on this game?
No other thoughts from me. I feel like Liam Jones is a player that doesn't get spoken about much. Liam Jones has played fantastically this year
Mm-hmm.
as that intercept general down back. Alex Keith has brought back some good form as well. What's happened with Caleb Daniel? Is he still forward or back? Or is he just
Uh,
being all over the shop?
I'm not 100% sure. Uh,
Because I do feel like Caleb Daniel is the best kick in the league as well in terms of passing the ball.
yeah, that's fair. I think he's played for defense,
More
if I
defense
remember
now.
right.
He's been put back in defense.
He started on the bench in this game. I think he's
Mm.
more of a defender. Don't quote me on that though.
Because I remember he was pushed forward a couple times
Yeah.
during the Fremantle game.
Mm.
So, no, other than that, I'm very impressed with how the Bulldogs are going. Liberatore as well as that veteran midfielder playing fantastically. But yeah, that's about it. GWS have a lot to build upon, and the Bulldogs just keep moving forward.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, the Giants, they still had a pretty good game, and
Mm,
that is definitely winnable in that last quarter. A big goal streak there, but
mm,
wasn't to be. Um, I'm pretty happy with their performance too. They weren't expected to
I
win,
am too.
and I think they're probably about where our expectations are for them at the
Mm.
moment.
I'm excited for them in the future
Well,
because they've got some really good players coming through.
for
And
sure.
like I said, they've got a lot to build upon. So I'm very excited for them.
Yeah, for sure.
When's the next game?
Okay. So my internet's decided to not not work
I'm
with
pretty
me
sure
here.
it's Hawthorn Fremantle,
Yeah.
Fremantle
Let's move on
bet the
to
Hawks.
Hawks Fremantle. Uh, at Optus, I Hawthorn didn't really do a whole lot this game. I feel. Uh, I mean, taking out Jath and Bruce hurt
No.
so much, but props to Fremantle. Um, great games by the usual suspects like
Mm,
Brayshaw, O'Meara, Luke Ryan, and all that. Um, but Luke Jackson also had a pretty good
mm.
game. Not in the ruck, but he got a lot more of the ground balls. In
And
this,
marks up forward.
yeah, in this game, and he ended up with 2 goals.
Mm,
So I actually didn't mind his performance. As an unbiased perspective, obviously,
mm,
Hawks guy, please don't do that ever again to us. But uh, he's if he can find that stride again and go do a similar thing, next week after, that could help Fremantle a bit more.
mm,
Um, we don't know how effective like the strategies in this game will be against other teams.
mm,
I mean, like Carlton blew West Coast out of the water a couple of weeks ago, and then they got destroyed on the weekend.
mm.
From the inside out. So whether this is, um, you know, replicatable for Fremantle is another question, but it's still pretty good effort, I feel.
A dub's a dub in my eyes, and even though it's a bit of a nothing game, like we saw with Carlton West Coast last week and Carlton this week, Fremantle just doing what they had to do to get the dubs. was good to see Nat Five come back as a medi sub, and the cheers around the ground was just really puts the hair up on your skin. Like, it was just fantastic to see him come back and to see him possibly return to a midfield role where at the start of the season he was more of a forward. Will be interesting to see. In terms of Hawthorn, I just remembered what I was going to get frustrated about with this game. Watching Frost play is like I don't have any words to describe Frost than just frustrating and annoying. He makes so many mistakes down back that it's just making the whole defensive structure crumble. Yes, we
Yeah,
brought him. We brought him in for speed, from Melbourne or Collingwood a couple of
Melbourne,
years back, from Melbourne.
I think.
But he's just so frustrating to watch, and the amount of free kicks that he gave away was just insane. And the amount of times he threw the ball along the ground, causing a 50-meter penalty. Like, it's undisciplined acts that show why the Hawks are a developing team, and why we should filter out some players like Frost to bring in some more either experienced players or some better youthful players. In terms of Fremantle, Jai Miss got robbed of the Rising Star
Fair
award,
enough.
but other than that, I'm just very disappointed solely with Frost and his game. Hawthorn, there's nothing much you can say, but it was just a team that's under construction
I,
because they've under construction in terms of what's good, what's bad, and just building upon that.
yeah, no, that's completely fair. I mean, there's a few players from Hawthorn I didn't mind their games.
Mm.
Mitch Lewis, he got 2 goals.
Hmm.
Blake Hardwick, pretty good game in defence. He did what he could. And then my best player I thought on the day for Hawthorn, probably Connor
Hmm.
Nash. Um,
Hmm.
I like his game at the moment. He's in good form. It's unfortunate the rest of the club isn't.
Mm.
But if you know me, I've kind of been saying since we got Frost that I don't really like saying the things about players, but I'm not a fan of Frost at all.
Mm.
I don't know why we got him. He hasn't fit our
It's like Carl
system.
Hardigan. Exactly like Carl Hardigan. Why do we get him?
I almost felt Cardigan was better, and I
You
don't.
reckon?
Yeah. Um,
Whoa.
I feel like the only reason he's playing is because he's part of the leadership group, but
Mm.
I feel like when I watch the games, like I can excuse like Scrimshaw or Granger
Mm.
Barras for making some mistakes. I guess fine, they're rookie almost. The younger guys, they don't have much
Mm.
experience. They're just in like in Scrimshaw's case too. He's almost feels like he's still in the system a little bit more, almost. But even then, I like Scrimshaw's game, so I'm not really kind of concerned. But Frost, I mean, for how many years he's been with this club, he's just making error after error.
2018. 2018, I think.
That's a lot.
2017.
That's a long time.
Mm.
Um, and I don't know how much longer he has. Probably has a bit more because he's part of the core captain's team.
Leadership.
But I'm really not a fan of him ever since we got him. So
In terms of leadership qualities, James Sicily has been a bit disappointing as well, with some of the immature acts that he displays on the field as well, especially arguing with umpires when he should just respect the umpire's decision and really put his words into action. He does put his words into action when playing, but sometimes he does have a bit of a blur, and it doesn't really look good on his reputation.
no, I like Sicily as captain though.
Yeah, I do too.
Um, I mean, like sometimes they're a little hot tempered, but nothing
Mm.
wrong with that at all for a captain. Um,
Mm.
if anything, it's meant to just fire up everyone else, which is what's
Mm.
happened sometimes. And I think it works down there, especially in defense, where they might be struggling a bit more than say the midfield. So I
That's
like
fair
him.
enough.
I like him as a captain.
I do
Frost.
too.
Frost. I have no idea what's happening, man. Yeah.
But a bit of a nothing game. Fremantle gets chocolates to see It'll be interesting to see how they play next week. Whether
Yep.
or not that game was actually a nothing game or whether it just revitalised their will to win.
Yeah, we'll see if that's a fluke against the Swans next week in Sydney.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah. All right.
On to the next one.
Sunday, Port Adelaide getting just over the line against Essendon. 12 goals 20 for Port Adelaide, but they still managed to win. Maybe the last quarter and third quarter, they kind of got their scores on the board, mainly behinds, but they scored on the board. What do you think from this game off the offset?
Essendon had them in the first half. Not gonna lie.
Yeah,
The Bombers were just blowing him out of the park, and then the usual suspects of Horn, Francis, Butters, and Rosie came into play and killed their midfield. Zach Merritt played a very good game, as well as Darcy Parish. But ultimately, Bombers couldn't capitalise on Port Adelaide's mistakes. 12 goals 20, inaccurate indeed. But winning by 5 points, you take that any day. Even though they had the home ground advantage, we're expecting Port Adelaide to probably win by more against the Bombers, even though the Bombers are a very formidable foe. Charlie Dixon playing on one leg, kicking 2 goals in that last quarter, was fantastic to see. I've always been a fan of Charlie Dixon. Todd Marshall with a fantastic goal from the boundary. He's that other tall forward with barely any shoulder muscles. Really putting up some good form. I guess in terms of defense, it's there in between. It's their only sort of weak point, I guess. And even some of their forward line structure is not there as well. We saw some good bumps in this game. They proved that the bump isn't dead in the game. But I know that junior boy Rioli got a couple game suspensions in this game as well. So ultimately, Port Adelaide in the second half got fired up and got the chocolates.
yep. Essendon still had a very, very good game. I don't let the
Yeah,
scoreline
I agree
deceive
with
you.
that.
They, ignoring what you'd think going into the game, Essendon should have won this game. Port Adelaide is too inconsistent in front of goal, and he still had a lot of good performances, like Draper, Kyle Langford, Zach Merritt, as always, Darcy Parish. Like, there's still some really good performances from this team. It's just wasn't. It's just unlucky, I guess. In the second half, they Port Adelaide just kind of just run away. But oh well. Yeah, I mean, if you cop that one on the chin, I guess, but unlucky.
I've got nothing much to say about that game, but then
Looking at the
but Port
scoreline, I'm
Adelaide,
shocked. I'm shocked by 12 goals 20. It's not good enough for a team who should be pushing top 4. You would think in form at least at the moment. So
it should have been the other way around. 20 goals 12.
yes, I completely agree with that. Yeah, but oh well.
Port Adelaide get the chocolates. You take that any day of the week, but
Yeah,
just
I
doesn't put
don't.
in their percentage.
Yeah, I'm not too sure what to say about this one. Yeah, Port Adelaide
It's more
just
the next
easy.
game that's going to be fun to talk about.
Well, it is the next couple, and I think Sunday is kind of a similar theme as Port Adelaide, where no one can kind of kick straight. I don't know why, but Collingwood getting over the line like by 5 goals against Sydney MCG. First time they've played it in Melbourne
In 10
for
years.
in 10 years. Yeah. So
Since the Adam Goods incident.
yes, yeah.
And it was a very similar incident with Buddy Franklin. Every time he got the ball, he was booed. And the disrespect behind that is that you shouldn't be booing one of the legends of the game, who's Indigenous player as well. So he can take that any way he wants. He can say, you're billing me because I'm an Indigenous player. Whether or not that's true or not, who knows? But it was very disappointing to see the Collingwood fans boo a legend of the game, who we have grown up watching and admiring, kicking 70, 80-meter goals from the centre square. But pushing that aside, Collingwood played a fantastic game. Brady Myercheck with 5 goals, including a freakish scissor kick where Jordan De Goey kicked it to the goal square.
Love that.
Do you think that goal is better than Will
No,
Ashcroft's? Or
I still think it's good.
mm,
But no, it's not topping Ashcroft. Um, no.
um, the one takeout of this game is Sydney targeted Nick Dacos, and because of that, it just took all the heat off Sydney's structure, and that's why I feel they lost. They were solely concentrating on this one dangerous player, and they were solely concentrating on him compared to actually playing the game. At the start of the game, Clark was put on him, and even though Dacos got the second most touches for his team, it just took Collingwood to go, oh, so they're just going for Dacos, we'll defend him, and just bypass their structure because they were solely concentrated on him. So for any other team out there that's coming up against the Pies, you'd you'd concentrate on Dacos, of course, and really nullifying his role down half back. But you'd also want to play the game in your own style and really not worry about one sole player because at the end of the day, there's 18 people on the field per team, and one player can't do everything, you know? So that's why Sydney lost, in my opinion.
That's fair enough. They had a lot of empty stats, I feel. But
Mm,
it's similar to, well, if you watch the NBA, it's similar to how the teams that kind of play against Steph Curry, and
mm,
nowadays more Joel Embiid, where,
mm,
you know, I mean, also congrats to Joel Embiid,
mm,
MVP. I don't agree with that, but, MVP to Joel Embiid. Um, but it's like, yeah, you can focus a player, you can try to shut them down, put them off the court, but there's all these other guys which are just as dangerous, um, that can really hurt your team. Like, you
mm,
shut down Steph Curry, but there's still Klay Thompson, there's still Jordan Poole, like all these guys. They can still hurt your team. You can't forget about them. You can't just
mm,
double, triple team Steph Curry. Joel Embiid. Yeah, sure, you can take him out of the game. That's one of the reasons why I didn't have him as MVP. Because the other players on the team, they can still win without him. You can't
mm,
just focus one player who's obviously the best player on the team and expect, oh, we'll win now. There's other
mm,
pieces that move around, and that can still fulfill their roles and work. I think it's a
mm.
very similar story here with Nick Dacos. Sydney focusing him probably a bit too much tagging. Um, Honestly, both
There's
Dacos
nothing wrong with
brothers,
tagging either, by the
no,
way. There's nothing wrong with tagging.
not at all. I think it's a good strategy, even if it's, say what you will about it. It's still a very good way to shut certain players down who are having
Mm,
impact. And the catch of that is you can't forget about everyone else.
mm,
So yeah, that's kind of what this game kind of felt like. Um, in saying that, I mean, Errol Goulden, one of the reasons I tuned into this game is because I looked at my fantasy app. I'm like, oh, he's got 50 points at quarter time. And then he ended up with 161. It's like what, 13 marks, 37 disposals. Uh,
mm,
he had a good game statistically. However, I feel it was still pretty empty stat wise. And I feel like I can say similar things about the rest of the Sydney squad.
mm,
Um, Very low scoring affair, and I guess Collingwood kind of just got there. Yeah, in
mm,
the end, and Scott Pendlebury 31 disposals, Quainer 9 marks, and he's got good games from other guys too. Even though you
mm,
shut down allegedly Nick Dacos, he still had 25 disposals. which it's still a better performance than a lot of other guys
Mm.
his age. So
And the way he acted towards the tag and sort of scruffle with him, he had no he didn't want any part of it. He was just walking away and just wanting to play the game.
yeah,
So for him to really be mature and just worry about the game more than the player really shows that it's going to be very hard to get into the psyche of Nick Dacos and getting into his minds to really frustrate him. I feel like there will be times where he gets frustrated and does this random punch, and he'll probably get a suspension maybe here or there, because frustrations do tend to boil over. But the way Nick Dacos acted on the weekend was fantastic. And the players standing up for him. You got Braden Maynard, you got the Bull just coming in and saying, "Oi, mate, we're here to play footy. If you want to mess with him, you mess with me. You have to get past me to get to him." And that's what they did, to be honest. Clark played on in stoppages. Clark played on different players, and because he was solely concentrated on Dacos, he left his man to get the ball. Like I remember one time he was on Pendlebury, Mr. Clark was, and Dacos was on Chad Warner,
hmm
and Clark was solely concentrated on Dacos. That Pendlebury just got the ball, and because Dacos was on Chad Warner, Dacos ran, got the handball and handballed it over, and Clark just went to him and just bumped him. So worry about the men you're on at a stoppage more than the player who's dangerous, and you're wanting to tag.
yep, fair enough. Um, Collingwood did also win,
Mm.
the hitouts in the center. Not a super high bar.
Big cocks.
I actually really liked Cox's game today.
Mm.
Oh, the day
On
off.
Sunday.
Yeah, on Sunday. Yeah, I actually liked his game. So
Mm.
props to that. Um,
Mm.
but him and Frampton kind of made a mess out of Laddams and McLean.
Mm.
Once again,
They're really missing Hickey.
yeah. I mean, you wouldn't call either of those two like super high caliber,
Mm.
Laddams and McLean, but I mean, hey, you'll take those for
Mm.
sure. I think that kind of helped as well. Um, with the midfield. Uh,
Mm.
Anything else you want to say about this game?
Not on my mind. Nothing else is on my
No.
mind.
I one thing I do want to say, going back to the
Mm.
booing on
Mm.
Buddy, I don't see any reason why anyone needs to be booing.
Mm.
I mean,
Unless he's having a set shot.
well, but like Buddy, yeah, obviously you want to get into the mental, distract them, but like Buddy Franklin, like I can see what who's traded in the 2013 off season from Hawthorn.
Mm-hmm.
I can see like 2014, 15, a bit of like out of the Hawthorn phase. You could see probably some booing from the Hawthorn guys, which I can
Mm.
get because he was one of the best players, and he just got traded. He wanted to get traded, he was gone.
Mm.
Um, so I can see like the Hawthorn guys around that time booing him. That's fine. Nothing racist about that.
Mm.
Um, or ill intended in that kind of way. But I can see that scenario happening, and you see it all the time with other players who want to get traded out of a situation, like Corn
Mm.
Francis. Um, but in saying that, it's like Collingwood has no reason to. Well, Collingwood fans have no reason to be booing like Buddy
Mm.
Franklin, legend of the game, uh, Indigenous superstar. You know,
Future Hall of Famer.
oh yeah, for sure, at two clubs at that. So it's I don't get it. I don't know why they've done
Mm.
it, but
Disrespectful.
for sure. You see with Collingwood fans all the time at games. I mean, what can you do? I
It's
bet
a bit of a stereotype, but they don't really
it's a stereotype,
help their
but
case.
yeah, they live up to it too, which is unfortunate. Um,
Mm.
at least a lot of the time when you look at the telly, you'll
Mm.
see like every time the telly goes to a Collingwood player, they've got the finger up. It's like, oh, thank you. We didn't need that at our broadcast, but thanks for that, mate. But yeah, for no reason. But no, they live up to the stereotype.
Cop
Unfortunately.
that, Joffa.
Yeah. Um, No, we need that out of our game, and
Mm.
it's very unfortunate to see one of the biggest our biggest club fan bases in the competition doing that,
Mm.
and I'm just not for that at all.
I totally agree. Um,
Shame
Nothing
on you.
against shame on you. Collingwood, in terms of the team, is very good, but the culture at the club, especially with past incidents that have happened over the past year or two, the culture could use some improving. Even though McRae is a fantastic coach and they're playing very well, and they've stamped that out, and McRae's trying to stamp that bullying out as well. He made a couple of comments, and Darcy Moore made a couple of comments as well. But again, it doesn't help their case as a fan base. The culture does need to change, and the racial stigma towards Indigenous people needs to be stamped out as well.
Yeah,
So, because we are all equal.
yeah. I mean, we go for Hawthorn. Say what you will about
Mm,
our club, but
mm.
yeah, the
We do
whole
not stand for it.
no, not at all. And this stigma around, I guess, Collingwood fan base as a fan base, um, it's not great at all.
Mm.
Um, it's disappointing to see.
There's a time and a place.
Well, for
Not for racism. No,
no, I was gonna
for
say,
racism. No. Yeah, there is no time. There is no time and place. That's my bad.
yeah,
That came out wrong. But there is no time and place for racism.
no, absolutely. However, on to the last game of the weekend. Oh, this mess, this one. North Melbourne, St Kilda. Uh, the game
Four
played
goals, 10.
the game played very one way. No one could kick straight. No, it was just ping, 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 ping. It's like ping.
Mm.
Game of
Ping
table
pong.
tennis, ping pong. It was just, goes forward to North Melbourne's forward half. There's a set
Mm.
mark because St Kilda's defense is just like that. They're built different. Goes
Mm.
back out, intercept again and again and again. I tuned in for about 10 minutes. I left. I was not having it. North Melbourne 4 goals 10. Did you watch this game?
I didn't watch this game, but
No.
I did watch Tim Membry's game. Tim Membry's game is horrible.
Yeah.
He needs to be putting in a lot more effort, or else once Caminiti returns, he'll be taking Membry's spot.
Yep.
Membry needs to do more.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Come back to, I guess, North Melbourne. Take a
Mm.
guess at when their first goal was.
Wasn't it the sometime like 3 minutes ago in the second half, in the second quarter?
No,
Third quarter?
third quarter. So at halftime, they had 0 goals, 7 behinds. And yeah, a few minutes into the third quarter is when they got their first and second goals. This is not a good game at all for North. I don't know what Clarko's trying to cook up there, but it's something. They're definitely cooking. I don't know if it's not good. They're cooking. It's a bit of
Bit of a circus at the moment.
just a bit. I don't know. Is it maybe it's the culture thing? Maybe they've just gotten too comfortable with Clarko. Maybe.
I don't
Whether
think it's that. I
where
don't think it's
maybe it's just a tactical thing. I don't know. Maybe it's
that. They're tanking for Harley Reid.
No, that's our job. Leave him alone.
God damn it.
I'm happy that we're bottom of the ladder now. By percentage. Just like, yes. Take that, Eagles. He's ours. um, but
No, it was a bit of a bore to watch.
yeah. I mean, even St Kilda wasn't flash either, reminding us of what the last decade's been. With 8 goals, 16. Yeah, just a casual 16 behinds.
Casual.
Yeah, this was a game of all time for sure. But
One of the games.
I don't know what else to say about this one. A lot of empty
There's no-
a lot of empty stats. Jack Siebel with 18 marks.
Stephen
And
played a good game.
yeah, he had a good game statistically, but I feel like it's a bit empty. Like
Mm,
18 marks, 36 disposals. But a lot of that I feel like was just intercepts.
mm,
I feel. Um, I mean, even Liam Shields, 7 marks, 9 tackles. Now, there's a similar story across the board. Like
mm.
Liam Stocker from the Saints, 16 marks. And like all of these, like a lot of marks combined, and the game only had 12 goals scored.
What was it? Mateus Filippo kicked 0 goals, 8. Is that true?
Uh, he only had one behind. Maybe he
I
just
thought
missed
he.
a lot more than that.
Um, I do feel like Mateus Filippo, even though he's playing very well as an 18-year-old, I do feel like Jai Miss deserves the Rising Star more over Mateus Filippo.
That's fair. Yeah, and I mean on the weekend, Filippo, we had what? Yeah, one behind,
Mm.
13 disposals, 6 marks, and 4 tackles. So it's still like not
He took a
bad.
good mark. He took a good mark
Yeah,
as
it's
well.
like
But there are more players that are in that similar age range that I feel like were more worthy
that's
of the Rising Star award
that's
this
fair.
round.
Yeah, I mean, look, don't get us wrong. Like 6 marks, 4 tackles, still not
Mm,
bad, especially
very
for a
good.
guy in his position. But in a game where I feel like a lot of empty stats, bit of stat
Mm,
padding even, if you want to get into basketball. But no, I think yeah, Jai Miss had a bit of a better game,
mm,
and I mean if you pull out the same stat line in a different scenario where you're winning barely, and it's a bit of a less of a ping pong game, more of a football game, then yeah, sure you could probably make the case, but
mm.
Jai Miss snubbed out a little. All right,
On to power rankings.
yeah. So once again, we've done power rankings beforehand because of some technical things. Hopefully in the future we can sort that out. We can do them live, but we'll go over what our power rankings were and changes were, and hot points for this week. So Collingwood
Do
stay
you want to start
first.
off with it?
Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
start off.
Collingwood say first.
Collingwood stay first. We've moved Geelong up to second. I think they were fifth or something like that last week.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the top four is pretty solid.
Mm.
You can make the case for Brisbane and Port Adelaide. They're definitely pushing it. But I feel like Collingwood, Geelong, St Kilda, Melbourne, that's the four teams to beat.
And Brisbane.
Brisbane's up there too. Yeah.
Mm.
I feel like not just barely out of that range as the others.
That's
Uh,
fair enough.
I think
I do feel like St Kilda will swap with Brisbane soon.
yeah. As more clubs kind of figure out
Mm.
the boss's system, I can see that definitely. And their performance on the weekend for both Geelong and St Kilda is probably why we've got them around that way.
Mm-hmm.
Melbourne's in fourth because they dished up a shocker against the Suns and they let them come close.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's many credit to the Suns, I feel, but wouldn't be the situation if you're a better club.
Mm.
Going down the list, Port Adelaide, Bulldogs, yep. Bulldogs,
Adelaide.
yeah. Adelaide's fallen down a little, mainly because Bulldogs and Port Adelaide kind of getting into really good form right now, and Adelaide's kind of slipping back away.
Mm-hmm.
But in saying that, they did have a really good performance against Geelong, and next week,
Mm.
they've got St Kilda in Adelaide, so that could
That'll be a good game.
that'll kind of shape how the top eight here,
Mm.
or kind of will shape out,
Mm.
which should be really cool to see.
Mm.
Going down, Sydney, going below
Bombers.
Essendon, another kind of disappointing show from them. They're not quite there yet, but they have, I guess, an easier-ish schedule coming up. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Fremantle, North Melbourne, Carlton, and then the bye. And then after the bye, they've got St Kilda. So I mean, take it as you will. They're next month, but they're not quite. They're not top 9. I don't feel.
Not yet.
We don't feel. This might come as a surprise, but we've got Gold Coast above Carlton. Do you want to explain this one?
Carlton are just a really disappointing team at the moment with the list that they've got and the promises that they make. If I was a Carlton fan, I'd be very frustrated going to their games, especially since they haven't made finals since 2013, if I
Yeah.
remember correctly.
And that was only because Essendon were forced to be taken out.
Yep.
That was the only reason. But they made finals that year on a technicality.
Gold Coast, we both feel had a greater performance against the D's compared to Carlton's performance against Brisbane, and that's why we have decided to make that change, as well as where Carlton are placed in terms of, even though they've got a good win to loss ratio with like 4 wins, 3 losses, and 1 draw, they're just not there compared to the top tier teams.
Yeah. And whereas I think Jacob would agree with me on this. Gold Coast are getting better week in, week
Yes.
out. They're getting a lot better, and they're improving a lot as a club. They're getting back into that last year's form, where they're starting to almost make a case for finals. Not sure if what happened this year because there's a lot of really good teams which are up there. I mean, looking at the top 8 now, you could make a case that's the top 8. But even then, Sydney and Essendon can push there. Carlton could push it. Richmond, if they get back, can push it. Maybe. They're 15th.
Doubt it.
I think they're 15th now, but you can see it maybe in some universe. So it'll be hard, but they're making a case for it, which is good enough, I feel, for me. Maybe the same for Jacob.
Yes.
Whereas Carlton, on the other hand, I feel like regressing a little. Not quite hitting the same strides as they were. And yes, you can have some good performances from some players against worse teams, but it doesn't work as we've seen against Brisbane, against better clubs, and that's what matters. So,
Especially when it comes to the end of the season when finals come around, because finals are a whole different season compared to the home and away season, isn't it, Elijah?
exactly. We also see Giants above Richmond again. Richmond turned up and halfway through the third quarter, but Giants were fighting against the Bulldogs, who are actually a good team and not West Coast, the whole game. So, and they nearly won that too. So it's like you can't really compare the two. One, waited forever to finally do something against a pretty deplorable side, as opposed to the Giants, who stayed competitive at least for nearly the whole game against the top 8 side.
The proof is in the pudding as well. Carlton bet West Coast a pretty deplorable West Coast last week, and then they dish up a performance like that to Brisbane. So that's why we left Richmond where they are, because even though they won against a bottom tier team, it's a bit of a nothing game. We would like to see them perhaps beat a middle tier team to a high tier team to really put evidence towards them moving up the power rankings.
Yep. I've had a similar story, at least from the last week, with Fremantle 2. That's why they've only stayed in 15. And on Richmond, I mean, I've been saying this for a few weeks now. It's the opposite story to Geelong. Whereas Geelong, too old, too good. Richmond's too old, just too old. The young guys are the only ones really stepping up, like Taranto, Hopper, those kind of guys. Bolton. the older guys just aren't doing it for me, at least. So, yeah. And I think the bottom three sides are pretty interchangeable.
Mm.
Um,
It
West,
just depends on how they play over the weekends against the quality opposition that they versus like Hawthorn last because which is horrible against Fremantle.
yep,
We put West Coast above everyone else in the bottom tier, even though they finished last week, because they put up a formidable fight against Richmond until about halfway through the third quarter. And
and they
North
actually look good
Melbourne,
doing it too. Like, no, that's wrong.
they,
Like, they looked good too.
mm,
So, yep,
and North Melbourne against St Kilda, 4 goals 10, and probably the only reason they're there is because they didn't lose as much compared to the Hawks.
yeah, and I think it would be discrediting. I guess Alistair Clarkson too. If we were like, oh, yep, they're
Mm.
last. They're
Mm.
awful because they're not awful. They have some good patches. They have some good signs.
Mm.
Most weeks. You can't really say the same thing about, say, Hawthorn or West Coast to the
Mm.
same degree. And at least it's different degrees. But
Mm.
yeah, the last three very interchangeable.
The funny thing I find with lower tier teams is the last round they play this outstanding game and usually beat a top tier team. So it'll be interesting to see what West Coast, North Melbourne, and Hawthorn dish up in the last round of the home and away season to really spice possibly the ladder up as well. Because we saw with the likes of Essendon when they were going through the Asada phase with players being banned, they versed Carlton and Essendon blew them out of the park because there was no pressure and they just showed passion and excitement.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to see what they dish up last round of the home and away season.
Well, in saying that, there actually will be some mix-ups. I mean, Hawthorn has a history of rocking up for absolutely no reason the last 5 rounds of the
Mm-hmm.
season when it's all done and dusted. Has a record for no reason. Oh, we'll just casually beat, Geelong by 5 goals.
Mm.
So the last
Because there's
round,
no pressure.
yeah. And I guess the top teams at that point in the season, they kind of dropped their ball a bit. Like, okay, we're versing 14th on the ladder.
Mm.
We're not gonna play, say, our best players, or we're gonna rest up a little.
They rest their players, yeah.
Yeah. Um. In saying that, last I think we'll go round 23 and 24. So round 23,
Mm-hmm.
second last round of the year. North Melbourne plays Richmond. That could, at the MCG, actually bang a match. That could be something.
Mm.
West Coast play the Bulldogs at Marvel. You'd expect that to kind of, at this rate at least, be a pretty one-sided game. And then Melbourne hosting Hawthorn, MCG. Once again, expect to be pretty one-sided. But last round of
Expect it to be.
expected to be, but it's Hawthorn. And we have faith that we'll do something, at least in the first half. But the last round is where it gets spicy.
Mm-hmm.
So we have North Melbourne versus Gold Coast in Tassie.
Oh.
And if Gold Coast is pushing for finals, that could be a very, very spicy game.
Mm-hmm.
We have Hawthorn hosting Fremantle at the MCG. I'm going to that if I can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Same here. Same here.
Or less at this rate. You'd
Mm.
also expect Fremantle to get a bit better. Coming off the
Mm.
form against Hawthorn again from this last week, but you never know. And the West Coast play Adelaide in Perth in the last round.
Ooh.
So once again, Adelaide's pushing finals. That could spice some things up,
Mm.
in Perth, and Adelaide don't rock up.
You never know
That
what
could
can
be
happen.
a giga banger. Yeah.
But let's go on to the predictions for next round, I
For sure.
guess.
Yeah. Enough dilly dallying. Let's get onto the predictions. So, Friday night, MCG, Richmond, Geelong.
Geelong.
Yep. Purely based on previous form. Richmond do play better at the MCG. Geelong not
It would
as
still be a
much.
good game. It would
Yeah.
still be a good game.
I mean,
But
Geelong's definitely better on the thinner grounds, and Richmond the opposite. So I can see the argument kind of for Richmond, but you'd have to bring me back to round 3 because there's no way I see them winning this. Knowing my luck, they're winning this one just because I said that. But
commentator's curse.
yeah, I feel like Geelong should, and if they're second where we put them, they should be one of the top teams in the comp and win this game. And if they are, then they'll actually win. If not, we're definitely seeing something shift in the power rankings next week.
100%.
A big change too. Any other thoughts on this one, or just steam ahead?
Steam ahead.
All right. Another Friday night game.
Or two?
We got 2 in Perth. Whoa. Eagles host the Suns.
Suns.
I have Suns too. However, I'd give the Eagles a sneaky chance. It's in Perth.
Yes.
And they've got some good form behind them. Pretty good game against the Tigers for the most part. And the Suns, they have a bit of a stinger against the Ds. But how they act upon that will be interesting to see. They're in good form right now. How that holds up on the other side of the country will be interesting to see.
What happens.
Unless the Richmond Geelong game gets too spicy, too close, I'm probably tuning into this one. Bit more of a slog, but I feel like this game's stakes at least are a bit more interesting for me personally.
I've got no real thoughts on it. Stand forward.
Fair enough. Saturday, we've got the normal Monday game Saturday. Don't worry. Sydney hosting Fremantle.
Sydney. You'd hope Sydney get back into some form sooner rather than later, and you'd want to do it at home as well against Fremantle. So I'm going Sydney here.
Yeah. Well, this is where one of my couple hot takes for this round. I got Fremantle.
You got Fremantle.
I have Fremantle. Now, I know it's a bit of a big call because Sydney in Sydney. You think I'd be really good. Now, I really liked the way the Fremantle played against Hawthorn. It worked the whole time up too. So if they bring the same intensity and Luke Jackson plays a similar role, I think they could get across the line. I don't think it's going to be a blowout at all, but I think Fremantle, very, very sneaky chance to make a lot of noise here.
I think Sydney will win by 30-odd points. Sydney will win solely because of past history with Carlton beating West Coast by a fair margin and then dishing up a horrible performance towards a quality opponent. So that's why I think Sydney will win. Fremantle bet a bit of a nothing team in Hawthorn. And will probably dish up the same performance against Sydney.
I can see
that.
In
my opinion.
Looking at the SCG this year for Sydney, they demolished Hawthorn, but then they lost by 2 points to Port Adelaide and 1 point to the Giants. So it's actually 1 and 2 right now at the SCG. Do you think that matters at the moment?
No.
Okay. Fair enough. Because I would also consider that with my Fremantle pick. Right. Not as good form as they usually are at the SCG. Both Giants and Port, they let slip away, if I remember right. So, not as confident, I guess, as you are on this one.
That's fair enough.
Right. Going along in Tassie, in Hobart, North Melbourne hosting Port Adelaide.
That's going to be a good game. Jason Horn-Francis against
Mhm.
his old team.
Yeah.
I've got Power beating them, but I do feel as though Zerha will have a couple of things to say to Horn-Francis. I reckon Zerha could get a 3-week suspension in this game.
Call of the round. Zuhar gets a 3-week suspension. um, I mean, going by what the MRO have been saying recently, it was probably about 8 or
Oh
nothing.
yeah,
8 or
yeah,
nothing. Take your pick, but um, we'll talk about that later.
yeah.
I have Port Adelaide winning this game. But I can see it being competitive.
It's
I
going to be competitive.
Yeah, I do like Port Adelaide's form a bit more though.
Mm.
That's the main reason. Um, it'll be interesting to see how, like, I guess the crowd turns out, and hopefully North Melbourne turn out too for this.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first game I think in Tassie since they've announced the Tassie team.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully, the fans rally around this one and they actually rock
Mm.
up. 2:10 on a Saturday. If you're not like me and have an essay due the next day, I'd be going. So,
Priorities.
yeah, no, this hopefully should be a closer game, I think, than
Mm.
everyone thinks. All right.
Next game.
Hawthorn, MCG, West Melbourne.
Melbourne should win pretty easily. Hawthorn will probably play good in the first half, and then the second half, Melbourne will blow us out.
Yeah. Luke Brister and Giath should come
Should make
back
a return.
this week. Um, I expect to see a lot more fight from Hawthorn coming back of last week. Always
Mm-hmm.
happens. Hawthorn gets blown out. Sam Mitchell pulls out the whip and gets them into shape. But yeah, judging by, getting demolished by Fremantle, you'd expect Melbourne to do even more damage.
Mm-hmm.
So
I reckon Hawthorn could lose by 80 to 110 points.
yeah, I can see that. I can also see it being close till half time and then Melbourne only
A
winning by
50 point.
yeah, like what, 6, 7 to 10 goals. I
Yeah,
can see.
fair enough.
I don't think there's much else to say about that one. Melbourne should win.
Nothing much here either.
Yep.
Next game.
All right. Saturday night. Both are really good.
Mm.
Brisbane hosting Essendon.
Brisbane.
Yep. I
Brisbane,
Yep.
because of home ground advantage, they play really well at home.
Yep. I have Brisbane too. Pure best of home ground. Essendon will be
Livid
fuming.
after last round.
Essendon will be fuming after losing the last one. So
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll come swinging. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I just think Brisbane at home a bit too good.
Agreed.
Yep. Okay. Okay. So, hopefully I get to go to this game. If I get, uh, you know,
Get essay done.
I have 3 to get done, buddy. Uh,
Okay, pal.
if I can, I'd like to go to this one. I'll say that.
Mm.
The tipping and the odds are
Mm.
opposite. But Carlton Bulldogs, a Marvel Stadium. The official tipping website for the AFL, Carlton's winning, or favoured at least, 55 to 45. I was looking at the odds. The Bulldogs are up by, they're up by 4 cents.
I
So
think the Bulldogs will win because their forward firepower are up and running compared to Carlton.
yeah, I would agree, and that's the same reason I have them tipped too. I can see a case for Carlton. I think the midfields are relatively comparable, but only if you take out Bontempelli.
Bontempelli is going to kill this game. I feel like Patrick Cripps is going to eat his dust. But Marcus Bontempelli is going to play a fantastic game.
Cripps, Walsh, Chera, like they have a good midfield, Carlton. But I think Bulldogs are very comparable. Um, and I think going forward, I like the Bulldogs significantly more than Carlton.
Mm.
Bulldogs
It's a lot
also,
more. It's a lot more athletic and diverse compared to Carlton. You've got an athletic leaper in Norton, and you got Jamara Ugle-Hagan who can go off the ground, take a good lead and good mark. Whereas Harry Mackay is more that one-on-one player, and Charlie Curnow is more that athletic lead jump mark
yeah,
sort of player. And then you got Artie Jones, you got all these other players, Mitch Hannon. You got more of a diverse forward compared to Carlton. Like Jesse Motlop probably can do a bit more as a small forward. Got Owies, Durden, so on and so forth. And I feel like the Bulldogs' diverse forward will get them over the line.
yeah. I can say that's fair. If people are on the fence or they're slightly towards one side than the other, a couple of players to consider. Tim English, best ruck in the
Mm.
comp. If you're going for Carlton in this game, are you scared of English? Um, I think he's probably going to help the centre clearances out a lot, and it's going to get Bulldogs out running.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be scared of that if I'm going for Carlton in this game. Little cautious there. On the flip side, this kind of goes for both of us. Watch out for Sam Doherty.
Mm.
Not sure how it will go against this Bulldogs forward line. Be interesting to see. But yeah, he's pretty good. He's a pretty good
Mm.
defender. So um I'll very interested to actually see how he shapes out in this game.
Mm.
And
And Sard as well
Sar's a
after a
good one
pretty
too.
poor game.
Yes.
Mm.
Um how I think last week or maybe week before. Um actually no, it was this week. Friday night against
Round
Brisbane.
eight. It was Brisbane.
Brisbane.
Brisbane
They
shut Sard
they,
off.
they shut Sard down. Whether the Bulldogs do a similar thing or the Carlton make adjustments to change that, we'll
Mm.
find out. We don't know the ins and outs as we're recording this, but if we're assuming the sides will be the exact same, I'd watch out for all three of those guys.
Mm.
Yeah.
100%.
Anything else you want to say about this one?
No, sir.
No. Should be a great game.
It will
Um,
be a great game.
as long as one team doesn't get off to a really good start.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay. Now, Sunday, only got two games because of the
Mm-hmm.
West Coast Gold Coast on Friday night. But Adelaide hosting St Kilda.
I've got Adelaide.
Same.
Home
Uh,
ground advantage, and they're a formidable foe up there as well. So
yeah.
that's why I feel like this will be a learning curve for St Kilda as well.
Yeah. Historically, St Kilda's been one of the worst sides at Adelaide Oval. I think they highlighted
Mm-hmm.
that at Gather Round. Granted, they played pretty well for the most part against Collingwood in Gather Round
Mm-hmm.
in Adelaide. But I think Adelaide's just a different beast.
100%.
Um, so yeah, you would
I've got nothing else to say about it.
you would expect Adelaide to win this one. Defensively, do you think St Kilda's got enough to stop the likes of the Crows forward line?
Tex Wilkie will always be a fantastic player,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't just solely concentrate on Wilkie. So I don't think they will this round. I feel like they'll lose this game, and then next week they'll come back firing.
That's interesting. I feel like they can make some noise. I feel like they have potential to shut down the likes of Rankin, Tex, Fogarty.
Mm.
Um, I still do have Adelaide, but I think there has potential for this to be another low-scoring game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I guess if Adelaide find them out fast,
Mm-hmm.
it could get ugly fast.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Fair enough.
last game of the round. Collingwood MCG hosting the Giants.
Collingwood.
Yep.
Pretty easy. I reckon the Giants will be leading at 3/4 time though.
Okay. I can see that.
But I I do have the Giants leading at 3/4 time, and then Collingwood just blow them out of the water by 20 points.
That's fair. The Giants are not a bad club by any stretch of the
Mm,
imagination.
100%.
They're very competitive, I guess, in a lot of their games. Don't count them out. But this is Collingwood we're talking about,
Mm,
and yeah, it's Collingwood. They're the best team in the
mm,
comp right now. Uh, Nick Dacos, Pendlebury, Mason
mm.
Cox. The whole, I don't think we can stop them. Not in the last quarter.
They, they do have their flaws, Collingwood. Like, they
Yeah,
do have their slumps. But that's with every other team. Every other team has their flaws and their pros.
for sure.
So it's going to be very interesting come finals time, whether or not it will just be blowouts or really close games. And you'd hope that finals are close games, especially the grand final, because we haven't had a spectacle in a while, haven't we, Elijah?
It's been a minute. Yeah.
Since 2018.
hmm Okay, that's it for
But
the
that's
games.
predictions.
All right.
Now, what is Mr. Jacob angry about?
Don't ask me. What are
There's
you?
a couple things that I'm angry about, but if I can put it to one thing, I'm going to be targeting Carlton again. Their list should be thereabouts for finals, and for them to dish up an 85 point turnover stat with Brisbane, it's just not good enough. They need to be better. And I'm so harsh on Carlton, even though I hate Carlton, you got to be harsh on them because they've got a good team. They've got a good base to push for finals. I was expecting Harry Mackay and Charlie Curnow to be firing after last week's performance against the Eagles. But as proven, it was a bit of a nothing game because they were versing a lower tier team. And they need to be doing better against quality opposition. It's just very frustrating to see Carlton put up these types of displays and they just can't make finals. They're just letting their fans down, they're letting themselves down, and they're letting the players like Patrick Cripps and Doherty down because they've played 150 plus games or 100 plus games and they haven't played a single final. The only player to play a final in that team is Sard when he played at the Bombers when they versed the Eagles up in Optus. Their finals experience needs to improve so then they can push for finals. So then they can push for a premiership, for premiership glory. Because without premiership experience or finals experience, you won't be able to win a grand final. You need to have that experience behind your back to say, oh, I know what a finals game is like. The intensity is very high. The fans are very loud and proud. And we need to experience that because we haven't experienced that in 10 years.
Yeah. Do you think Carlton? Um, I guess whether it's even at the end of the season. Do you think they maybe
Mm.
trade for an older player who has that experience? To help
Possibly.
that out. Yeah.
Possibly. They could possibly look at maybe the Bulldogs, trade there. They could probably even trade at the Eagles. Surely, like
Darling.
you could put Darling, possibly.
Bontempelli. No.
No, Bontempo's not going anywhere. Probably even like a Jason Johannesson, Norm Smith medalist.
Mm-hmm.
You can look at even Melbourne. Some players that have fallen out of favour, like McDonald, possibly. You can look at you can even look at the Giants because they've got players there that have played in the grand final even though they lost. You can look at losing teams as well. Some about the winning teams and players that you can even look at the losing players.
For
Like
sure.
you can look at the likes of um McLean. McLean, you can look at who's there for the Swans. He's fallen out of favour. You can even like Cunningham. Cunningham for the Swans. He played back in 2012. I'm pretty sure. Um, in that grand final. You can look at the likes of for the Bulldogs. Who else can you look at? You need Rourke Smith. Rourke Smith has fallen out of favour
Hmm.
with the Dogs at the moment, and I'm not sure if he's injured or not. And the thing that Carlton can put on the table is De Koning,
That's true.
because De Koning's fallen out of favour, and there are a lot of teams like the Swans that want him.
Yeah, I can see that.
Now, what made you frustrated, Elijah?
I think the booing incident. But we've already talked
Mm.
about that one. We're a bit
Mm.
disappointed with how
Very.
that happened.
Mm.
But I guess also the scoring on Sunday.
Mm.
Essendon was the only team to have more goals than behinds. Collingwood ended out evening it out 11-11.
Mm.
But until the last quarter, they were also in a similar situation. So we had Port Adelaide finishing with
Mm.
12 goals 20. We had, North Melbourne kicking shocking, only 4 goals. As St Kilda as well. Sydney kicked 6 goals 12. And until the fourth quarter, Collingwood only had 6 goals 9.
Mm-hmm.
They turned that around and they got 5 goals 2 in the last quarter, but still very, very poor across the board on Sunday. Essendon, the only team with a positive goal behind ratio with 3 goals 9.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I can't make an excuse for Port Adelaide because Essendon kicked straight. You can't blame wind. North Melbourne and St Kilda, it was under the roof at Marvel.
No
There was
wind.
no wind, not a whistle. And they both managed to kick combined 12 goals and 26 behinds.
Mm.
So,
Need Jason Dunstall or Tony Lockett to come back and teach these blokes how to kick a drop hunt.
maybe. Hopefully, it's just an off week for all those clubs. But even
No, but I argue that because St Kilda have been known for inconsistent goal shooting over the past 4 or 5 years,
yeah, well, longer than that.
especially with King.
Well, no, since they've what was the last time? 2010 grand final.
Mm-hmm.
And then they finals 2011. Since then, probably they've kind of all over the shop in front of goal. Granted, different
Fair
situation
enough.
5 years ago to now, but it's not great still.
It's fair enough.
Yeah, I'm just disappointed. I'm not even mad. I'm disappointed. Another week.
Mm.
So
That's fair enough.
hopefully it's a one-off for a lot of these clubs, and hopefully next week they can kick straight.
Mm.
Yeah.
On to player of the round.
Yeah. Who do you have?
I've changed mine since last talking to you, Elijah. I've
Okay.
gone with Dunkley.
Dunkley? Okay.
I've gone with Dunkley. Dunkley played a fantastic game. He played a full game on Patrick Cripps, turned him defensively and offensively. Was it 13 tackles, 38 disposals, something like that? He played a fantastic game, and it was a very complete game by a player who's in the prime of his life.
Yep. I mean, look, 33 disposals, 11 marks,
33.
4 and 13 tackles.
Mm.
Like, yeah, really, really good stuff from him.
Mm.
I have Brody Mychek.
Mm-hmm.
Not the best game statistically of
Mm-hmm.
the whole Collingwood squad even, or even the whole round. But 5 goals, really instrumental goals too. Like when they needed them, that really good goal on the goal line against Blakey,
Mm-hmm.
who was defending him.
Is a kick.
Yeah, and along with 4 marks. I really liked his game on the weekend. And yeah, once again, not the most statistically outstanding of all the players,
Mm.
but I still liked his game as a fan's view of the game.
Mm.
Yeah, just watching the
To
way he played.
to think that this guy was overlooked in 7 national drafts, and he's only been in the system for 5 years, and he's putting up displays like that. I've really loved him ever since he's joined the AFL, and I'm very surprised that he was overlooked in 7 national drafts.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Mm,
But he's definitely one of the best pieces at Collingwood right now, especially in
mm,
their forward line. So
100%.
props to him, and props to
Props to him.
Dunkley too. Yeah.
Now on to final messages. Final messages. Now, I remember talking to you yesterday about this, Elijah, but do the VFL need to change the name of the VFL
Mm.
because of the amount of interstate teams coming in, like the Sharks, Brisbane, Sydney, GWS, etc.? Should it be changed to AFL twos, or what do you think?
It's conflicting. Um, because on one hand, like yeah, the second, like most of them are like reserve teams at the top
Mm.
end. Like Box Hill, Brisbane, Gold Coast. Um,
KC,
yeah.
Williams. Oh, Williamstown is their own separate thing, but are they?
Uh, William, yeah, I was also get to that.
Yeah.
So you have other teams who mainly from Victoria, Northern Bullants, Williamstown, Coburg. These are not, um, you know, AFL reserve sides. These are just your standard run of the mill VFL teams.
And then you got the Sharks from
Yeah,
Queensland.
yeah. Sharks are Queensland, so I can't get the VFL ladder up, but
Mm,
um, it's like a lot of the teams which are doing really well are these reserve teams for these AFL clubs who get a lot more
mm,
funding, a lot more good players. You know, oh, they didn't play as well in the AFL this week. You know, we'll drop like Levi Casbolt down.
mm,
So it's like you could change the name,
mm.
but I think it's main only until a few years ago it wasn't actually it was a Victorian league.
It's
Only
because of COVID.
because of COVID, yeah. It's now opened up this can of worms where all of a sudden we have
Mm.
Queensland teams flying down to
New
play.
South Wales teams.
Yeah, like you have like this Coburg team who they've been in Victoria for ages. All of a sudden now have to go fly up to Gold Coast.
Mm.
It's yeah. I don't.
It's a bit damning on their family as well. Even though they're professional athletes and they should be used to traveling, um, they're not used to traveling interstate though, because they've solely been based in Victoria. So it is pretty damning on relationships at home as well, but it is a commitment. You are here to play footy.
Yeah,
So there's always two sides to it. You're committed to playing an elite sport, but as well as family always coming first and your future coming first as well, because footy is only about a 5 to 15 year career, isn't it?
thereabouts. Yeah. Um, and Williamstown, I guess, is one exception I would like to make because they receive once again like they're just a normal VFL team
Mm,
doing their job, but they play well. I think most
mm,
seasons. I'm not up to date on VFL.
mm,
Um, like even Port Melbourne as well. Another
mm,
team, not too great, just like Coburg, but they're stuck in this VFL system, which now has
mm,
other teams in it. So I'm probably just less of a
mm,
fan of the system, to be honest.
mm.
But if we're keeping it as is, um, whether you make set two separate leagues maybe is a question.
Maybe.
Um, because I mean, as it stands, you have even before the interstate clubs came in, you had like the Geelong reserves and the Hawthorn
Mm,
reserves and Essendon and all these other teams. You had basically their seconds playing every
mm,
week, and they have funding, they have money, they have basically guaranteed players, which will be good week in week out, as long as the main team is good. Um, So it's maybe it's a question of, do we make it more of a local-ish VFL team, or VFL league with actual VFL sides which aren't as
Mm,
related to the AFL clubs. Uh, so then I think at least you could basically just make a whole reserves league. It's like AFL reserves,
mm,
and
mm,
that those teams you can go Box Hill Hawks, your Casey Demons, your Brisbane Lions seconds. Um, they can all go play in a different
mm,
league. You could even add maybe a promotion system too. So
mm,
say Southport wins their league right up in
mm,
Queensland. They can go play in the VFL reserves,
mm.
so AFL reserves league. That could
That's
be an
fair
option.
enough.
Yeah. You could even have like a end of season tournament, right, where
Mm.
the best team in Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland, Tassie all come together,
Bit of a
play.
state of origin.
Yeah, almost. They play games, and the team, which maybe the top two teams that wins, go up to AFL reserves.
Mm. That's fair enough.
Um, that could be a system that could work.
And the last question I have for you, Elijah, is the consistency around suspensions.
Yeah. Um, yeah, we see it every week, don't we?
Mm.
This isn't new.
We're not
Um,
playing soccer. We're playing footy. We're allowed to have bumps in the footy, but in terms of consistency, like Jacob Van Rooyen was attacking the ball and he got a too much suspension or bumping a guy head high. Um, and the consistency where, oh, I bumped this guy, I get a 3 week ban, but the same player did the exact same thing the exact same day and he only gets a 1 week ban.
yeah.
Like there has to be a line in the sand where it says if you do this type of bump, it's 2 weeks. If you do this type of bump, it's 4 weeks. I feel like there needs to be a display as to what type of bump um, it directly correlates to how many weeks you get.
I mean, to a degree, there is right. I mean, if you
Yeah,
remember back to round one, I think Cozzy Pickett got what 2 weeks
yeah,
for a high contact careless bump on
on Smith.
Smith, yeah, and late too. So that was like that's probably the beginning of the end. I feel, but
Mm,
um, if you're getting 2 weeks for that, even though I think that should maybe one.
mm,
Mainly because it was careless and after the
mm.
fact that the ball had moved on. Um,
And Bailey Smith got up and was all
yes,
good to play.
he got up perfectly fine. He played the rest of the game out.
Mm,
I believe it was a similar story. With the Suns D's on the weekend.
mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it was a high contact, yes, but I don't know if there's anything else more than that. Maybe careless,
Mm,
but I think you could definitely argue it wasn't.
mm-hmm.
So I would probably let him go with nothing, to be
Yeah, it's
honest.
fair enough.
A week at worst. I don't think there was
Mm,
anything in it, and nothing ill intended either. So
it's fair enough.
bit stiff on that one, but yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to say before we end it?
Um, Not inherently. I'm looking forward to a lot
No.
of the games coming up in
Mm,
round 9 already. I think.
100%.
Carlton Bulldogs should be really, really good. Um, I'd keep an eye out for both Friday night games too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah,
And the Adelaide St Kilda game.
that'll be interesting. Yeah,
Mm.
for sure. I think that's it.
But with that, that comes to an end of another episode of the Premiership podcast. That is Jacob and Elijah out.
Yeah, thank you.
Sayonara.
Bye bye.